This is a story that happened in the past, so many of the details might be a bit blurry. It's not like it happened yesterday. I'll do my best to fill in the small details I don't fully remember. It was the last day of school, and I was sitting in fourth grade. Fourth grade was our last year in elementary school, where kids still had to be picked up by their parents, while fifth graders were allowed to walk home on their own. My mom always picked me up on the last day of school. My friend Jake and I had plans to hang out and celebrate the last day. Even though Jake wasn't in my class this year, we had been friends since kindergarten, and he was in a different class down the hall. After school, we lined up and walked to the exit at the end of the hallway, where we waited outside with our teacher, Miss Blue. I was waiting for Jake's dad to appear from the crowd of parents when I suddenly heard my name being called. When I turned around, a man was waving at me. He introduced himself as Jake's uncle and said he would be picking me up. I walked over to Miss Blue and told her I was being picked up, and she asked where he was. I pointed to Uncle Jake, who was still waving. Miss Blue let me go, and I followed the man through the crowd. He talked really fast, almost too fast to keep up with while carrying my backpack. He explained that Jake's dad was running late, so he offered to drive me home. When we got to his car, a maroon hatchback, it took me a while to realize that Jake was already at his house. When I asked, the man said Jake was playing video games inside. I felt awkward being around someone I didn't know, especially an adult. During the ride, he kept chatting, asking me about school and what subjects I was taking. We were in the car for about 10 minutes, which felt like a long time. When he parked in front of his house, I started to feel uneasy. He led me inside and locked the door behind us. Inside, it was really dark, and I noticed all the curtains were drawn. The only light came from a dim lamp in the corner of the room. When he looked at me and smiled, I asked where Jake was. Suddenly, he seemed anxious and mentioned that Jake was downstairs, telling me to wait. He disappeared into another room, and I heard a door open and footsteps leading down to the basement. My heart started racing, and I knew I was in danger. When I tried to open the door, it was locked. Panic set in, and I regretted walking into that house. I tried to find a way to escape and discovered a phone in the kitchen. I quickly dialed 911 and whispered for help, saying I had been kidnapped. They could hear me, and I hid the phone under a towel while I waited. When the man returned, he called my name and said Jake was here. As he approached, I felt terrified and asked if I could leave. His expression changed. His fake friendly smile vanished when he realized I wasn't comfortable anymore. He grabbed my wrist roughly, and I started screaming and crying. As he threatened me, I felt forced to comply. When we headed down to the basement, the door behind us slammed shut and locked. The place was dimly lit with a single hanging bulb. I knew this was the most frightening place for a kidnapped child. I could hear footsteps above, and I had no idea what he was planning. He asked if I was hungry, but I said no. He closed the door and locked it again. While I waited, I heard knocking at the door. The sounds continued, and I began screaming for help. When the door finally opened, a police officer rushed in and took me outside. Several police cars were waiting. I told them everything, and the man was arrested. It turned out he was a co-worker of Jake's dad, who had somehow found out that Jake and I would be picked up on the last day of school. After that incident, I went through counseling for several months. My parents were very upset with Miss Blue for not verifying who was picking me up. I still wonder what could have happened if I hadn't called 911. Years later, that experience still stuck with me. In my senior year of high school, my friends and I planned to explore an abandoned elementary school. Despite the stormy weather, we felt brave and wanted to check it out. However, once we were inside, we sensed that something was off. Strange noises and tension made us panic. As we ran to escape, we didn't know if we were alone in the building. During my college experience, I met Zach, a classmate who helped me in chemistry class. Although he wasn't threatening, he was quite awkward. When he asked me out, I felt uncomfortable and lied about going to Miami. But when he started sending me creepy messages, I felt trapped in a scary situation. When he showed up at my house, I was terrified and called the police. Although Zach was never arrested, that experience reminded me how important it is to stay safe.